Sorry, 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 guys. I had to climb through the mountain of people still sleeping on a conference champion that made it to the Super Bowl last year. Heck of a climb. Uh, okay. Hey. Uh, good to see you guys here. Uh, I think if I remember right, you guys you were wanting something. It was like it's like a good quiche or a like a good cookie recipe or oh, it's there at the top of my notes. It's power rankings. Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I guess I guess we can probably do that. You know what though? As I said, I did say in the chat, you guys are gonna have to be careful because you know some of y'all got stuff on your rosters that maybe he's not top tier, and your boy's got to say what he's gonna say. All right, nothing personal. Don't take shots at the guy. Don't take. I'm just a messenger. I'm also the guy who wrote the message, but don't pay attention to that part. Okay. So we're gonna go 12-1. We're gonna end up at the top, but we're gonna start at the very bottom. So coming in at number 12, this team has had a bit of a history with everyone. Trade deals, left and right, attempted deals here, maybe a play here. You know, some interesting moves, some trades at positions you maybe don't expect some trades. So at number 12, as sad as I am to say it, right now, even despite a bit of a more recent trade to kind of bolster the roster, at number 12 we have CJ. Team Tissue Bandit, as he just changed his name to. And you're going to start to see a bit of a theme with some of these later teams down the road here. And as you can kind of see, glancing over at the roster, in some of these lower tier teams, there's a bit of a lack of elite production in some areas. But in CJ's case, it is not for a lack of trying. Unless I've missed something on here, the only the only player in his starting lineup that CJ drafted is his kicker, who he then traded away and traded for again for way too many draft picks involved in both trades. And his kicker, who is one of 4 Colts on his roster, but that's neither here nor there. The very recent Josh Allen trade was a bit of an improvement at the quarterback position, although even there, we're going to see, if you look just a skosh down on his starting lineup, while some potential there, probably as of right now, I would call it the weakest running back core in the league. AJ Dillon is more of a timeshare guy. He's going to split a lot of the work with Aaron Jones. He will get a little bit more value, probably being the goal line guy more often than not. It's Hilaire who kind of scares me a bit more. He's become, as we'll get to in a little bit, like kind of like another running back, a bit of like an Antonio Gibson type of every year, oh, he's going to get drafted really high, he's going to have this big season, and then he never puts it together. And Hilaire is starting to get into that territory, especially with the Chiefs now having a good handful of running backs on their roster. I mean, Jerick McKinnon made plays for them last year. Everyone's really high on Isaiah Pacheco. So the Chiefs got some talent there, and he's going to be kind of pushed for some time. CJ's team is going to be carried as far as his receivers will take them. Devontae Adams, Michael Pittman are both, especially Pittman now having the higher upside with Matt Ryan, both guys that have top 10 upside, top 10 potential. Adams probably top 5, especially now playing with his former college teammate, playing in, not that Matt LaFleur is not, offensively minded, he very much is, but Derek Carr likes to air it out, and he's now playing in a system that has other threats that Green Bay perhaps didn't have in the past. Not a whole lot of people were double teaming Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Allen Lazard, but now he's on a team that has to worry about Hunter Renfrow in the slot and has to worry about Darren Waller at tight end. So there's some potential there. Dawson Knox coming off a breakout season for Buffalo. I like Dawson Knox. I was a bit worried about OJ Howard going there and maybe taking some volume from him, but now he's gone. That was kind of short-lived. And then, yeah, Hunter Renfrow sitting there in the flex. This team will be carried as far as his receivers can take him. Oh, excuse me. My worry a bit for Knox, especially, even though I've tried to make a deal for Knox. CJ turning down my tight end trades. He's now in an offense that did lose their offensive guru in Brian Daboll, who headed off for, greener pastures on another team. And other potential breakout candidates on that roster. Gabe Davis is a popular breakout candidate pick. Isaiah McKenzie is a popular candidate to break out, especially with Josh Allen kind of on the rise. Here with CJ's roster still, depth continues to be an issue, as it is with a lot of these lower tier teams. Only Christian Kirk on his bench could maybe be considered a multi-week starter if injury were to occur. Other players on CJ's bench are second, third, fourth options, or maybe have higher projections because of the offense they play in that might not project as well as they do, like Nyheim Hines. I like Hines, but even last season, in a year where he didn't miss a game, he was barely a top 60 running back because of the volume that Jonathan Taylor gets. And so that winds up, he might have some pass catching value here and there, but it doesn't really lend itself to, I feel like I can start this guy and he's going to get me 15 to 18 points. It's not impossible, but, it's just not necessarily likely. James Robinson is another one of these guys. Now he's coming off a major injury. He's going to lose a lot of work to Travis Etienne, who is the more dynamic player and now playing with his college quarterback in a system that really likes to utilize running backs under new head coach Doug Peterson. DJ Chark in Detroit is another one of these. Hasn't lived up to his top 20 finish from a few years ago. He's coming off a broken ankle. But this team does have some good future potential. Even just this season, CJ could outbid everybody on the waiver wire, okay? Everybody. Because he has more free agent bidding money than anyone. And, at least prior to the Josh Allen trade, I need to go maybe take another look at it. He did have 4 first-round picks going into next year. I believe he probably gave up at least 1 or 2 of those in that deal. But that is our number 12 spot. At number 11, a team that, on the flip side, not having one of the weakest running back cores, perhaps being carried by one specific stud running back, but some issues in other places. And thus, at number 11, we are looking at Sunshine's roster. Carried in a lot of ways here by Derrick Henry. Elijah Mitchell is a good player, perhaps not the RB2 you would like to have, but Derrick Henry, if healthy, is absolutely the workhorse for this team. Receiver is not a massive strength. It's not a weakness. Deontay Johnson just is coming off about a top 10 season. Marquise Brown is a bit more of a wonder for me, how he's going to do now in Arizona under Kyler Murray, his former college quarterback. I don't know how that's going to go. I've never really had a lot of faith in Hollywood Brown as a number 1 receiver, but it also was because he was playing in Baltimore in a not pass-friendly offense necessarily. Now he's playing with Kyler, who, let's face it, for as much people might like Lamar for different reasons, Kyler Murray is a better thrower of the football. And there are also other weapons to take pressure off of Marquise Brown here. They'll have DeAndre Hopkins after week 6. They still have A.J. Green there. They have Rondale Moore there. They have Zach Ertz there. They have James Conner, coming out of the backfield, and he's actually no slouch as a pass catcher. So Marquise Brown's going to see his share of one-on-ones. This is his season to kind of prove if he's the guy. I like Dallas Goedert at the tight end spot here. He got a good amount of volume post the Zach Ertz trade to Arizona last season. Jalen Hurts is now in year 3, which is supposed to be, at least it used to be, the ascendant year for quarterbacks and kind of when they would pick up. But I like the pick there. McKenzie in the slot, or in the flex, is another big pick to break out this season. However, it is a bit risky to me perhaps to have to start at the flex a guy who's never finished higher than wide receiver 76, even with a bit of the upside that he has. Depth is a bit of a problem on this roster at every position except tight end, really. And I think even that's maybe changed. There were a lot of things. Everyone's done things last minute that I should have checked right before I got on this. But conversely, to CJ's, every starter here except for Isaiah McKenzie is a drafted player. So there are perhaps some trades here that could do this roster some goods. There are 2 additional first-round picks coming Sunshine's way next year as part of the Josh Allen deal that could help to kind of extend the talent on this roster in future seasons. Okay, going to number 9, and the one that I have had to spend the most time hiding their ranking. I don't believe they will be happy to be this low, but I have a lot of question marks here on this roster, ladies and gentlemen. And while she sleeps above me, we will have to talk about at number 10. Did I say 9? I meant 10. About my lovely wife's roster, Soraya. The big thing here, there's definitely a lot of upside with this running back core, but so many question marks. You can't see it here on the roster. Her 3rd running back is J.K. Dobbins. So between Barkley and J.K. Dobbins, massive injury questions. Saquon can still be that guy, I believe. The Giants have put a lot of pieces around him, so even if Daniel Jones is not the guy, which I don't think he is, he's kind of proven that, but Saquon, even his rookie year when the team was terrible, was able to make big plays to be this guy's a top 5 running back. It's just about the health. And now Dobbins, also from Baltimore, coming off of the major injury last season. The worry has been, is he going to be ready for week 1? We're not quite sure yet. So he's going to at least probably have a slow start to the season. The Ravens also signed Kenyon Drake during the offseason to kind of help fill that void a little bit. And Lamar's obviously, the way that he plays the game is always going to be a little bit dipping into some of that rushing production. David Montgomery, the question mark has been, with the new coaching regime coming into Chicago, and the way that they don't run things the way that Adam Gase did, but to be fair, nobody should. Does David Montgomery fit the system of the new, offensive scheme? And the rumor has been out that maybe the Bears don't love Montgomery as that guy. Maybe they like Khalil Herbert, his backup, more as that true starter, as a 3-down guy, or at least a 50-50 kind of split, whereas in the past several years it's been Montgomery is the guy and Herbert is the spellback. I like the receivers here. T. Higgins, Terry McLaurin, both very strong picks. However, they're both kind of more of a wide receiver 2. Higgins is being drafted as a wide receiver 1 this year. He's kind of been, or at least he's been on the fringe, depending on if it's like a 10 or 12 team league. T, and I love me some T. I think T's he could explode this year. He had just shy of 1,100 yards last year, and he missed 3 games. So T absolutely could have a giant season this year and be that wide receiver 1. Another question we now have on this roster. Even going back up to the top, as much as I love Joey B, and he's my dude, and that guy's going to win 78 Super Bowls within the next couple years, book it. How's the math work? I can't even tell you, but it's going to happen. When you have to put so much emphasis on your quarterback's production and he's not necessarily a running quarterback, it can be very tough for a non-running quarterback to carry a fantasy roster if they're not throwing for 40-plus touchdowns, which he could. I just think, again, it's this whole roster is about questions. We don't know if this is going to happen because of various things. Some of them are in a position to succeed. I think Joe Burrow are both in position to potentially reach those numbers. I think Saquon could be. They've made steps to improve that offense even more in New York. Hayden Hurst here at tight end, kind of a journeyman, but it wasn't from lack of production. He did very well in Baltimore. He did well early on in Atlanta, but both of those teams, Baltimore drafted Mark Andrews, who became maybe the best tight end in football, and then the Falcons immediately drafted Kyle Pitts. So opportunities taken away. I actually really like Darnell Mooney this season. He is the unquestioned number 1 receiver in Chicago. I think Justin Fields is going to have a big jump forward. It may not translate to wins necessarily for Chicago, but I think now he's in a system that's going to be fitting his strengths more. They're going to bootleg him a heck of a lot more. And Fields has the arm to hit some of these deep passes to Mooney that he kind of thrives on. Mooney can run routes at a lot of different depths, and I think he's going to be able to utilize that better this year, having a system that isn't, Fields drops back to pass, looks around, has no idea what's happening, gets hit, fumbles the ball. So further down on the roster, we do, as I kind of point out on here, a bit one of the weaker tight end situations in the league. There's not a whole lot behind Hayden Hurst here, so if he doesn't kind of pop, then it's going to be a bit of a question mark. And only a few solid depth pieces. Mooney I have on there as the list, but he starting at the flex now. It's kind of I don't know. And then past that, you have Soraya has Rondale Moore and Tony Pollard are really the only two that in a pinch you could maybe get a start out of and be okay. Pollard, the big thing for him is if Zeke gets injured in Dallas, Pollard becomes an RB1. That's really the only thing, is if Ezekiel Elliott has an injury. But past that, you're looking at guys like Christian Watson and CJ Uzomah, who right now are probably waiver wire players more than back end of the roster kind of guys. So, going on to number 9, a team that just recently made a big deal. Perhaps a big deal like for the other side, because this team gave up a big player. But at number 9, we're looking at Brad's roster. So we have a couple of top 5 level producers. We got Brady at quarterback. We got Christian McCaffrey, assuming health. I wanna hope for good things. I have him in another league as a keeper. Come on, CMC. Mike Williams could get there. He could be a top 5 guy. But a weaker RB2, I have never had faith in Miles Sanders. I think that he's not durable. I think he's had fumble issues. He's had 7 fumbles in the past 3 years. He didn't score a single touchdown last season, which just absolutely tanks any and all value as a starting fantasy running back. And also he hasn't played more than 12 games since his rookie year. Even after the Travis Kelce trade that Brad made with me. Thank you, Brad. Woo! Yeah. Thanos. Whatever Michael said. Thing. Avengers reference. Still questions here with running back depth. If it was not for the trade with me for Kelce and I sent Michael Carter back, Brad does not have a third running back on the roster, at least at the time of posting this or the time of making this. He didn't have a third running back on the roster. Now, there are some future picks coming Brad's way. He also got a replacement level tight end in Tyler Higbee, who could be pretty solid for the Rams this year. But a lot of question marks here on the roster. Definitely a major issue with depth. If we were really just looking at like bench play especially, I think that this team would be further down. But with Brady and McCaffrey and Mike Williams kind of carrying this roster, I think that it vaults him up to number 9 here at this spot. I also and with AJ Brown there at the flex, although AJ Brown I imagine will be the actual second wide receiver, and you kind of flip Juju to flex there. And AJ Brown could be massive in Philly. He's going to get, he had like a 27% target share last season in Tennessee, and now he's playing with Jalen Hurts, who it remains to be seen, but also in year 3, this dude might kind of pop off here now that they're putting these big targets around him. And if AJ Brown gets the volume that he did last year, he's going to be gigantic. And I even like Juju, although Brad also had a strange debate with me about whether or not Juju was going to be a 1,000-yard receiver this year. I said yes. Brad said no, but now Brad's starting him on his team, which is kind of an interesting part. There are some nice options who could overperform on the bench here, with like Robert Woods, with Rashad Bateman, some receivers who could make a play here, but there are also 3 very young rookie receivers at the back end: Wan'Dale Robinson, Jahan Dotson, and Garrett Wilson. So there's some talent here for the future if one of those guys winds up being able to kind of explode, but depending on the situation, we'll have to see. Okay, I'm going to try to start hurrying up, or this is going to be a 45-minute video. All right, bring us to number 8. At times, the bane of my existence. Because if I get one more finger-licking chicken trade offer for Austin Eckler, I am going to flip a table the way that our beloved Jesus himself did, although not nearly as gracefully. So at number 8, we are looking at Michael's roster. And this was kind of the back half of the power rankings, with teams that have a position group or a spot here that is kind of lacking in higher end production. Michael's got good start at quarterback in Kyler Murray, who could have a top 5 season. I believe actually was just coming off of one a handful of years ago. Yeah, his rookie year, actually, he was 6th, and then the second year, he was the 3rd overall quarterback in fantasy. The issue here is at running back, where I think this is either between, it's kind of tied between Michael and CJ. If CJ or Michael here has the worst running back core in the league. Melvin Gordon is now about to lose major production because of a loss of touches to Javonte Williams, who's going to be probably by, I would say, week 3 or 4. He's probably going to be the big bell cow guy in Denver. He's capable of more than Melvin Gordon is at this point. He's much younger, and they know they have to get the play action game going properly in Denver because that's always been a huge part of Russell Wilson's game. Josh Jacobs, it's almost like the Miles Sanders thing. It's not an injury thing, but just Josh Jacobs keeps getting drafted as like a top 7 running back sometimes, and then he never meets that bar. He could be a top 15 running back. But now, especially with Amir Abdullah as their spell back taking the 3rd down snaps, with Zamir White coming in as the 3rd back, and apparently the team loves him, and especially now that Josh McDaniels is there as the head coach, they inherited Josh Jacobs. He's not their guy. So they very easily could take, a shot here on someone like Zamir White, who they drafted, and, see if there's maybe something there, let Josh Jacobs go. They did not pick up his 5th-year option. So this could wind up being his last year. Or, here pretty soon could be his last year. One of the league's stronger waiver wire pickups last season in Zach Ertz, where I believe he actually just kind of picked him up randomly in the middle of the year, and Zach Ertz wound up being top 10 fantasy tight end. So kudos to Michael for finding a gem there. The receivers 100% carry this team. Tyreek and Debo are both top 10 guys, assuming that they can reproduce those kind of seasons again, but both again have question marks, like we've been talking with several of these. Tyreek now giving up Patrick Mahomes and freaking just pooping all over him, and now anointing Tua as he's the leader of Tuanon. Tyreek is. Tyreek now anointing Tua Tagovailoa as he's the most accurate quarterback in the league. He's a GOAT. He's a dude. I don't know about that, Tyreek, but that leaves some questions for Tyreek. And then with Debo, now completely flipping the script on their quarterback conversation. Jimmy G, now the backup, should have been out. I mean, that's a whole separate conversation because now they created a whole mess of issues for Lance as the starter. But Trey Lance now coming in. Is he going to be what they're hoping here in his first year as a starter? And if not, how does that affect Debo's production, especially with the rumblings in the offseason that he wasn't super happy with being a running back wide receiver hybrid? I like Cooks at the flex here. He seems to be kind of quarterback production immune. Like, regardless of who's throwing to him, Brandon Cooks is going to have 1,000 yards. So it's a good flex play there. I like I said, the receivers are what's going to carry this team from start to finish mostly. The depth here that Michael has is what separates him from the teams that are below him. As much as I don't love his starters at running back, he's got strong depth at the position. He's got Raheem Mostert, who's going to get touches in Miami, even though Chase Edmonds is the kind of the bell cow guy. Darrell Henderson playing for the LA Rams, who's going to get, again, he's going to get volume because even if Cam Akers becomes that bell cow guy, and I would love for him to, here's hoping, he's coming off a major injury, and Darrell Henderson was productive last year, like before Akers came back, in spots after he came back. James Cook, a running back from Buffalo, rookie this season, that I believe I traded to Michael, but a future asset that could wind up being pretty valuable. And then some good pieces at receiver: Devontae Parker, Tyler Lockett, Zay Jones, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I'll question this, as I will with several other rosters that we'll get to. Why are y'all silly people keeping backup kickers and backup defenses on your dang rosters? I don't understand what I'm looking at. But Michael is the first one of these that I need to say, y'all silly. Y'all silly, and it needs to stop, okay? So we're going to go on. We're going to go on from number 8 here, and we're going to head to number 7, a team that made probably made the biggest splashy trade of the offseason, trying to jump into the title conversation this year. And I'm talking about Mr. Corey Burkhart. This team made the move of the offseason, trading a whole slew of stuff, a whole mess of goodies for Jonathan Taylor. RB1 in fantasy, absolutely monstrous, gigantic season last year, and now pairing him with Joe Mixon, I would say probably the best 1-2 punch at running back in the league. I mean, just look at the projections right there. You're looking at just shy of a 40-point projection just from his starting running backs, and that's a heck of a deal. Now, it did come at a big cost. Corey wound up giving up Allen Robinson, a good wide receiver 2, Leonard Fournette, an RB1 or an RB2, Aaron Jones, an RB1 or RB2, definitely drafted as an RB1, and then 2 first-rounders just for Jonathan Taylor and a second-round pick. It was a hefty price tag, but it was a win-now move, which is what Dynasty is all about. I'm here for it. And on top of that, Corey finally, after what felt like decades, eons of wishing it into existence, Corey finally got his guy, starting George Kittle at tight end. You got to give props. Man set his sights on something, and then he got it. Took time, but he did it. I think receiver is perhaps a bit of a weaker spot on this roster. Adam Thielen, some people are thinking, this is going to be a bounce-back year for him, and it could potentially be. Minnesota is a very trendy pick, not just for the playoffs, but perhaps for the division this season, with Green Bay taking a bit of a step back. I know Colton's not on that train. But Thielen got another year older. Justin Jefferson is in year 3. And even with Kevin O'Connell now coming in as their head coach, having everything be more offensively skewed, I think he might be able to unlock Kirk Cousins, which, is a weird sentence to say. But Kirk Cousins kind of gets crapped on as this, mid-tier, I don't know. Kirk Cousins had, almost 40, he had, well over 4,000 yards, and he had, almost 35 touchdowns last year. Kirk Cousins is a stud when he needs to be. It's just, can he put it together for an entire season through big moments, lead them to a big thing? Now he's not playing under Mike Zimmer, who I know Ryan at times was not the biggest fan of. But I like Minnesota this year. I just don't know if I like Thielen to take a step forward at the age that he's at. Bit of a ballsy choice here, starting 2 tight ends. Kittle at tight end, and then Darren Waller at flex. Could work out. We'll have to see. Waller coming up, in his age 30-ish season, coming off of injuries, but he's not going to be seeing some of these, safety and a corner, pinch doubles anymore, because you got Devontae Adams on the team now. You're gonna have to you have to have a safety that can single cover Darren Waller, or Devontae Adams is going to do Devontae Adams things. So now, as great as these starting running backs are, and again maybe the best in the league, one injury means Corey is having to start Devin Singletary, who is not bad, but he's definitely not who you want in your starting lineup. Wide receiver definitely took a hit with losing Allen Robinson, and until DeAndre Hopkins is back, this might be a little bit of a middle-of-the-pack group. Ayuk is the big question mark. If Lance pops, is Ayuk that next big take-a-step guy? He started last season in the doghouse in San Francisco, but kind of started to trend upward towards the end of the year and still showed a lot of those physical tools that we've seen from him as a playmaker. So we'll have to see. Ayuk is still a bit of a potential play. The wide receiver depth is solid here, which is probably going to get dipped into if either Kittle or Waller gets hurt, which tends to happen most years. But Robbie Anderson, Mecole Hardman, AJ Green, Julio Jones, all guys who potentially, in a pinch, could start, a week, maybe 2 at the flex. Guys who are going to be, apart from maybe AJ Green, are going to be bigger pieces of the offense for various reasons, various changes on their team. And then there's the big question. And Corey even messaged me about this at some point. Dak as his starter at quarterback, Trey Lance. Both have rushing value. Both have a lot of good offensive pieces around them, although Dak did lose some, with Amari Cooper going to Cleveland, Cedric Wilson going to Miami, and Michael Gallup's going to start the season on the PUP list. So we'll have to see. Dak is maybe the safer play, but Trey Lance could be, if he's what they're hoping, Trey Lance could be a league winner this year. I'm not going to say Mahomes in his first year as a starter, but Lamar in his first year as a starter. Not the same level of production, but a big armed, he could throw for 25 touchdowns, could rush for 8 to 10. I'm not saying it'll happen. I'm saying if he hits that bar that they're hoping, he could be a league winner for some people. And especially on a roster like this that went big, went all in on trying to make these big trades, it's possible. Okay, That is number 7. We're going to go down to number 6, to a young fellow that I just mentioned, and someone who confused me for eons because he had 2 stud tight ends on his roster and didn't want to trade either one of them, but didn't start both of them sometimes. And I'm talking here at number 6 about the Vikings fan himself, about Ryan. Starting his boy Kirk Cousins up at the top. A strong running back group here. Very strong. 2 top, like 12 plays-ish, Javonte Williams and Alvin Kamara. The big question for Kamara being if he winds up getting suspended. If not, dude's still a beast. And especially, as weird as it is to say this, especially if Jameis is back. Before the injury, Jameis was playing very well for New Orleans, and I think he can kind of keep that up, especially now they've added more talent to that room. They drafted Chris Olave. They signed Jarvis Landry. Michael Thomas might be coming back, finally fully healthy, from all of that talking that somehow got him injured, because that's just, he did a lot of it. He did a heck of a lot of it. Now the tight end situation kind of cleared up. Dalton Schultz here settled in as the starter with Kittle gone. Receivers here also top tier. Stephon Diggs, Mike Evans, both top 10 kind of guys. There's a lot to like in this starting lineup. And I'm even pretty high on Travis Etienne in Jacksonville. I know James Robinson is kind of the holdover. He's going to be the guy that gets a lot of these carries, but it's almost similarly to Josh Jacobs. While I know Doug Peterson didn't draft Etienne, it's only Etienne's second season, but he missed basically all of his first with injury. So now Doug Peterson kind of gets to mold Etienne into the back that he wants him to be. And so he almost winds up being the de facto, oh, this is my guy, even though I didn't draft him. Robinson, especially coming off the injury and not being the pass catcher that Etienne is, I think Etienne is going to be a solid play here at the flex. Again, barring injury. Here's hoping things go well for him, and especially just Trevor Lawrence is going to have a better year without the ghost of Urban Meyer and other ghosts weirdly twerking on him in a ghost bar somewhere. That's not hanging over the franchise anymore. So hopefully Trevor's going to have a much better season. Depth is an issue here at most positions if we kind of go down through the bench. Once we get onto his kind of secondary team here, although I do like Trevor Lawrence here. Where did my thing go? There it is. Once we get to the bench, we have some questions at running back. Dontrell Hilliard is probably not going to get a lot of touches necessarily in Houston unless Dameon Pierce just isn't the guy that everyone's thinking he's going to be, which is possible. Trey Sermon is then his next running back, who was released by San Francisco and then picked up by Philly, but he's going to be like the 4th or 5th running back in Philly. He might even be a practice squad guy. We'll have to see. Odell Beckham on this roster, despite the fact that he's a free agent. I don't know if that's just like stubbornness or if it's the 300 IQ play from Ryan. He's going to sign somewhere and he's going to be good, because it could be big, and then that does a lot for the depth here. I do have to say, as I'm kind of scrolling down through this, one of the more, and I don't want to toss shots here. I'm speaking truth. Speaking truth, guys, okay? That's all I do here on Happy Hour. One of the trades that I've had more questions about this offseason was the straight-up trade Chris Godwin for Devin Duvernay. I don't have any issues with Devin Duvernay. I don't. But Chris Godwin has been a top 30 receiver 3 times, even as not the number 1 option on the team. 3 times. I understand he's coming off of injury, but all signs, all reports seem to be that if he's not ready by week 1, he'll be ready by week 2, and he's going to be good to go. Devin Duvernay's played 2 seasons in the league, and he's never finished above wide receiver 97. And he's now he's continuing even more to play in this same Baltimore offense that gets running backs back off of injury, because Gus Edwards will be back at some point. J.K. Dobbins will be back pretty soon. Rashad Bateman is about to step up and be the next big guy. Mark Andrews is still there. They drafted Isaiah Likely as their second tight end, who's probably going to wind up taking some volume, some catches, because Baltimore likes to run a lot of 2 tight end sets, a lot of 12 personnel. So we'll see. We'll see if there's any, like, a whole lot of production left for Duvernay to get. I just don't know if that was necessarily an equal 1-for-1 trade there. I do know I understand the reasoning of not wanting to have Godwin and Evans both on the same roster, because they might take away targets from each other. but I think we're in an era where most offenses can support multiple top 30 wide receivers at the same time. And I'm not just talking about like the top end, like, Bengals, Chargers, any of the I think other teams are capable, depending on quarterback play, of supporting multiple top 30 wide receivers, and I think Tampa with the GOAT is definitely one of those. Excuse me. But yes, there at number 6, we got Ryan. Number 5, and I'm going to try to freaking get through these faster. Oh my gosh, we're already at 35 minutes. Jeez, I just talk so much. We're at number 5. Oh my goodness. A team that sits quietly under the radar, potentially because this team didn't have notifications enabled for the longest time. So maybe this team didn't know what all was happening, but I know that this issue is fixed now. Right? Isn't it? And number 5, we're talking about Jake's roster. Things to like here. Lamar, always a potential to be a top 2 fantasy quarterback because of the absolutely gigantic rushing value. But the concern for me, I wouldn't call it a concern. The questions come for me at running back. Zeke is not a big flashy pick. He's at least dependable enough to he's probably going to get you, 14 to 18. But there are people who believe that he's not even the best running back on the roster, that Tony Pollard is the guy who has kind of transcended him and should become the starter. And we'll have to see. He's had some injury concerns here in the past and then when Pollard's there, he tends to have, very good performances with Zeke out. James Conner, I think, is an even bigger question mark. I think last season he didn't even quite have 1,000 yards. Geez, not even close. No, last year he had 750 yards. All of his fantasy value, because he finished 5th in PPR scoring last year, all of his value was because he scored 15 touchdowns. 15! That's a ridiculous amount on a pass-heavy offense. But there just kept being these random games where James Conner would score 2, 3 touchdowns, and you're like, well, geez. I mean, he had 30 yards, but he scored 30 points because he had 3 touchdowns. So I don't know if he'll be able to replicate that, especially with the team having more weapons at receiver now. And Kyler, now he's gotten his payday. He can kind of play a little more loose. We'll have to see. I do like receiver here. Keenan Allen, I think, gets underrated most years, and the Chargers are probably only going to take a step forward with the offensive line getting even better. And Herbert now in year 3. Again, the year 3 of the quarterback is when they're supposed to kind of take off. DK Metcalf, I think, is a good dynasty have. But while Geno Smith is the quarterback, I don't know if the production will be there. I have the same question about Tyler Lockett. I just don't know what's going to be there. We know what Geno is. We know what Drew Lock is, although I don't imagine Lock's going to play much. So we'll have to see on DK. I mean, he's so physically talented, it may not matter. It may be that Geno can just chuck the ball up to him and things will go well. Hawkinson, I think, is sneaky good this year. I'm hearing a lot of things that I like out of Detroit. Even weirdly about Jared Goff, that he's had a very good camp. He's looking much more comfortable. They legitimately have no meme, no cap, as the youngins say. They have one of the best offensive lines in the league. They legitimately do. And they have a top-tier running back in DeAndre Swift. And they have a good guy behind him in Jamal Williams, who loves anime, which means that I love Jamal Williams. They have some talent out at receiver, albeit with some questions because DJ Chark's coming off the injury. They're going to have Jamison Williams, who they just drafted out of Alabama, coming in with an injury. We don't know when he's going to play, but there's some potential there. There's some big playmakers on defense, them drafting Aiden Hutchinson at their defensive end. So I like what I'm hearing from Detroit. So I like Hawkinson as potentially a guy who can overperform his ADP, or especially his ranking among tight ends. So kind of the same things for Amon-Ra St. Brown here at the flex. I'm hearing things that I like, and they're on Hard Knocks, so they always become America's darling. Holy crap, this is 40 minutes. We still have 4 teams left to go. There's still depth that is a concern here on this team, though. As I say with almost everybody. Running back is not an issue on this team, though. Running back depth. Because past his starters, we're looking at Jamal Williams. We're looking at Rashad Penny. We're looking at Ramondre Stevenson. All guys who could step in and have a big play. Stevenson's one that I especially like because he's more talented than Damian Harris. He's probably going to wind up taking snaps. If Michael Thomas does not come back at 80% of what Michael Thomas used to be, receiver depth is probably an issue here. And again, why are y'all sillies keeping backup defenses and kickers? All right, number 4, the team maybe in the best position for like the deep future or position to make a big play right now. We're looking at number 4, the Tissue Bandit, the Colton Bach. After the Jonathan Taylor trade, I imagine a lot of people thought, you know, this was almost like a tanking move. This was like Colton's even playing for further in the future. And I don't know if I see it that way. You got a very strong wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 in Allen Robinson, and 2 running back starters in Aaron Jones and Leonard Fournette. There's some good value here at receiver, DJ Moore, Jerry Jeudy. I don't know that it's top-end tight end or receiver production, but we'll have to see if Jeudy, or it's kind of a debate, you know, is Jeudy or is Cortland Sutton going to become the go-to guy for Russell Wilson? Kyle Pitts, I think, is point blank, one of the most valuable fantasy assets in the league because there are even fewer great tight ends than there are great running backs. And Kyle Pitts is one of those ones. I mean, we're looking at Kelsey, Andrews, Pitts, Waller, and that's really it. And Waller is even a question mark with the age coming off of the injury. Is he going to get phased a little bit out of the offense now that Devontae Adams is the guy? So I don't know. There's not a lot of elite tight ends, and so Pitts in Dynasty is a huge value. I like Devontae Smith here at the flex, especially in year 2 with Jalen Hurts. Now that Smith is going to be in his second year, I like the play there. The thing I love about this team, and with 7, count them, 7 first-round picks in the next 3 years, is at any moment, Colton could decide, you know what, this is the year that I'm going to go in and just start to trade these slew of assets for big pieces to try to go in for a championship. And that's the way you do it. That's how you do Dynasty right there. Best running back depth in the league to me. I mean, we have 2 very solid top 15 fringe top 10 starters. And then once we look to his bench, we're seeing Cordero Patterson, unquestioned number 1 in Atlanta. Kareem Hunt, who always winds up being a high-tier fantasy producer, even if Nick Chubb is still there. Chase Edmonds, who's going to be the number 1 in Miami. He's got multiple number 1s. Dameon Pierce, the number 1 in Houston. Breece Hall, who might wind up being the number 1 for the Jets on an improved offense. Unquestioned, to me, the best running back depth in the league. If you want trades, you need running backs, go to Colton. He's got them. And he's got all those first-round picks, and he wants even more of them. So just go to Colton. Give him 13 first-round picks. Let Colton. We're about to be in the era of Colton here in just a few minutes. Just give it a minute, and then good solid receivers at the back end. Allen Lazard, Allen Robinson, Tyler Boyd. There's a lot to like here. Okay, from number 4 to number 3, and I don't know if he expected to be this high, but with some top tier running back production, some top tier QB production, we're looking at Stephen Meyer's roster. Love the running backs here. Love them. I don't even totally know how this happened. I know it was just because Najee was a rookie, so he just didn't get drafted like crazy, crazy high. But 2 top 10 guys, Dalvin Cook, Najee Harris. Probably a top 5 quarterback producer in Justin Herbert. Receiver is a little bit more of an issue. CeeDee Lamb is a number 1, but now he's going to see all of the attention with all of their other pieces either hurt or gone. Amari Cooper, I don't know if I love him in Cleveland, especially until Deshaun Watson gets back. Pat Freiermuth, another guy, not on the level of Pitts, but a very good dynasty asset to have. Freiermuth could easily become like the Pittsburgh's next Heath Miller. He could be that next dude. I do worry about having to start a rookie receiver in Drake London on probably a bad offense at flex. And just the youth that's there, he got a little nicked up in the preseason. I don't know if I love that a lot. There's some good depth pieces here. Boston Scott, I think kind of a bit of an underrated asset here on the bench because Philly very much likes to go running back by committee under Sirianni, and I think Boston Scott's a good play there. Damian Harris, another big piece for New England if Stevenson doesn't necessarily take that job from him. So good running back depth here. Receiver, definitely a question. With Drake London starting at the flex, he's a rookie, he's hurt. We don't know what he is yet. Curtis Samuel, In Washington, we're not sure. Kadarius Toney, is he going to be, a top end receiver, or is he going to be a guy who once a year, oh, he caught like 9 balls for $190 and 2 touchdowns, and the rest of the year he has 400 yards? I don't know. Like, we'll have to see. But there's some receiver depth issues here, but there's so much talent at the very top end of this roster. Herbert, Cook, Harris, CeeDee Lamb, even Pat Freiermuth. There's really a lot to like here at the top. So I got to put Steven there at number 3. All right, to number 2. And honestly, guys, I know Michael said that I was Thanos, just accumulating assets here. There was a debate here at the top because there's 2 teams left. One was mine, one of them is obviously not. And these are both very good rosters. Very good rosters. I'm not the guy that has a lot of future assets and stuff. I've traded a lot of that stuff off. So maybe the other team's in better position to succeed. But for a handful of reasons, I wound up going at number 2 with the Caleb Cosby. Caleb's roster has a lot to it. Patrick Mahomes, top 5 quarterback producer. DeAndre Swift, potential top 5 guy. My one big question is really about Antonio Gibson. He had 7 games last year with only single-digit points, but then he had 5 games with over 20. So it's an up and down with him. J.D. McKissick takes a lot of the passing down reps from him, and there's even all the stuff about Antonio Gibson winning the kick returner job, which is definitely not what you want to hear about your starting running back if he's still going to be your starting running back. So, but again, I like what I'm hearing out of Detroit, so I think that's good news for Swift. Sneaky potential in Cortland Sutton, like I was talking about with Judy earlier. Is Sutton or is Jerry Jeudy going to be the guy under Russ? We don't know. He did like to throw a lot to DK. Sutton is the kind of the big-bodied, like, go up and get it kind of guy. So maybe that's the way that he goes. I like Sutton as a sneaky good play here. Receiver here, top-end production. Potentially the number 1 receiver in fantasy in Justin Jefferson. We'll have to see. Jalen Waddle, year 2. Offense has more pieces. Tua is going to get more settled in now, especially with them signing Teron Armstead to play left tackle. They're doing all the right things. Put all the pieces around Tua. That means good things for Jalen Waddle in a lot of ways. Andrews is kind of almost a sure bet at tight end, barring injury. He's got 3 top 6 finishes in the past 3 years. And last year he was an All-Pro and he was like tight end 1. So, and that was with Lamar missing, a portion of the season. So I think Andrews is, to me, if he's not tight end 1, he's tight end 2. So not really a big issue there. Running back depth is a concern, as it is with almost every team. If we're kind of looking up and down the bench here, because running backs are concerned with basically everyone. I don't know that Deontay Foreman's going to get a lot of play if McCaffrey stays healthy. Even if he doesn't, they have Chuba Hubbard there too, and we don't really know who's going to get the touches. Travis Homer, it's hard to know. I think he's probably the 3rd running back in Seattle, behind Penny and behind Kenneth Walker. So we'll have to see. And then Dearness Johnson doesn't really. They have Kareem Hunt ahead of him. They have Nick Chubb ahead of him. So Eno Benjamin, kind of the same. He's a 2nd or 3rd stringer with Arizona. So there's running back issues here. There is a little bit now with the Chris Godwin deal. There is at least a little bit there at receiver. But then Kenny Golladay is a big question mark for me. I don't know if he's going to kind of return to what he used to be in Detroit. I think maybe his head got a little too big. He's also playing with Daniel Jones. So, but unquestionably, Caleb has distinctly the deepest tight end room in the league. When he's starting Mark Andrews, and on his bench, he's got David Njoku, who's a popular, I say breakout candidate, but he's been in the league several years, but still, he's a popular pick to kind of have a big resurgence. And then Cole Kmet, who is actually one of the big picks for a big jump as a 2nd-year player. So unquestioned depth there at tight end. The big thing for Caleb here in terms of receiver, N'Keal Harry is going to come off of IR basically never because he's terrible and no one loves him. But I'm just kidding. Is he going to be the wide receiver 2 in Chicago? We don't know. He's not going to be wide receiver 1. But he also couldn't make it work in New England with Bill Belichick. We'll have to see under a new system. Is he going to be a bit more of a producer? Michael Gallup is also on Caleb's injured reserve list here. So Gallup does kind of help fill out that receiver void. But at some point then he'd have to draft someone. So we're going to see, probably I would bet, even a dip to some of the running back depth here. But a lot of top end talent up here on this roster. And I think there's some future assets along the way. I think Caleb has 3 first-round picks next year. He's made some very savvy deals from time to time, kind of keeping his team in contention, but also accumulating a little bit for the future. And I think team's in a good spot to contend for a title. And it was close enough that Caleb could have wound up at 1, but with no bias whatsoever. This is just pure fact. You can't. No one. This is all above board. Okay, the number 1 team right now, number 1 roster in the league, is gotta be my team. You know what I'm saying? And it started last season with the infamous, still in my household, draft day trade to jump ahead of my lovely wife to take Austin Eckler and Jamar Chase back to back, which was the crux of my inaugural championship from last season. But this team, and I don't want to toot my own horn for too long because we're at 51 minutes. I did not think this was going to take this long. Wow. But top 5 potential throughout almost this entire roster. Jalen Hurts was QB9 last season. He was QB9 in a season that people didn't think he was super great. He still was a top 10 fantasy producer at the position. Eckler and Chubb, both top 15 running backs. Austin Eckler was like RB2 last season, and the team's only gotten better. So I love what I have at running back here. I don't know that I am really going to be in a big fight for the top receiving core in the league, because both I have 2 like top 3 receivers. Jamar Chase and Cooper Kupp are both studs, both 20-plus point projected, set it and forget it kind of guys. The only worry for me, really, especially for Cooper Kupp, he had probably the greatest receiver season ever. There's going to be regression. He's not going to have 1,900 yards again. It's really not gonna happen unless I got insanely lucky. And with the Stafford elbow concerns that they've said are probably going to be around him all season, does that play a role in affecting Cooper Kupp's production? Because if Stafford's out, they have to go to John Wolford, who's not going to be throwing 17 targets a game to Cooper Kupp. Travis Kelce, obviously a top 2 tight end. Cam Akers is one that I've kind of gone back and forth with. I like having him on the roster. I like having him at flex. Gives me good running back depth. I don't, coming off the injury, we'll have to see. I have hopes for him, but there are definitely some question marks there, and I don't know. We're gonna have to kind of see how that goes. I do, again, really like the Jalen Hurts play, especially with them getting A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith in year 2. The word out of Philly's training camp is that Hurts has spent a truckload of time this offseason just at the facility in his playbook or in the weight room, which has apparently, from what they've said, has helped improve his accuracy, improved his anticipation. I also have issues with running back depth, which are a bit alleviated by having a running back at my flex, but like most teams, a little bit of a concern if there were a couple running back injuries. I do have some mid-tier options, Mike Davis in Baltimore now, who's going to get some good play if J.K. Dobbins isn't there. Plus, they like to use multiple running backs anyway. Mark Ingram, who's always been, when he's been that RB2 in New Orleans, has always excelled in that role. Plus, gets even more value if Kamara is suspended the first 5-6 games or something. So we'll have to see. And then some pretty good receiver depth here. Marvin Jones in Jacksonville, who even in a bad situation last year, was almost a top 30 receiver. Was wide receiver 33 last year with a rookie quarterback, a terrible offensive line, and Urban Meyer out here freaking punting kickers in the thigh, telling them they sucked and calling them kicker because heaven forbid you learn a nice man's name once in a while. Something crazy about that. Paris Campbell, who can't stay healthy, but the Colts seem to like what he's done this year. Jacoby Myers, who in all situations in New England just winds up being like a guy that no one talks about. Then he has a pretty good year. And then Chase Claypool, who is going to be fighting for targets in Pittsburgh, but he's a big physical guy. He's probably going to play a good amount in the slot this season, so I like my receiver depth here. And then if something happens to Travis Kelce, I got Mike Gesicki, who, you know, people are down on him. And I don't love having him as a starter, but I like having him as a backup. So that's what I'm talking about. The Travis Kelce deal for me with Brad was a huge improvement at the biggest position of need that I had, which was at tight end. And so the big issue for me really comes with a lack of future picks. However, if you look up and down the roster here, a lot of this roster is pretty young. I'm not saying they're all like 22, but most of the roster is like 27 and younger. And so I like my chances to contend here for the next couple of seasons. Well, guys, that is 55 minutes, and I was hoping to get it done in 20. So, yeah, you know, I don't know how long it's gonna take to upload to YouTube, and I don't expect half of you are gonna watch this because it's almost an hour long. But you know, I wrote out a big script, and I did it for you guys. And it's like 2:40 in the morning, and it's hot in this house, so I'm gonna turn on this fan. But above all, this is a really fun league. I think we've done a lot of good stuff here to set up a fun league. I think trading is always a big thing. I think so many redraft leagues are, I don't want to trade. I like my players. But Dynasty, man, it's all about future assets. And I love how this league has been with that. I love how social this league has been. I think it's been super fun. Super, super fun. People kind of playing for the future. People going all in for the current season. That's what I want to see. And above all, guys, football, as of right now, because it's almost 3 in the morning, football starts today. Freaking today. Rams, Bills, tonight. Tonight on Thursday Night Football. Guys, excitement. It's time for football. It's time for year 2 of the Hannibal Dynasty League. Let's go. Let's make a move. Hope to see you guys out there. Okay, bye.